Our next video on fasteners has to do with screws. As you can see here, we have quite a variety of screws, and there is no way we could cover every single type of screw that's out there. There are thousands. But again, we're going to take a look at some of the more common ones that you might come across. First thing I want to do is just talk about the parts of a screw so we have some vocabulary to work with here. So here we have a basic wood screw. And we start off, and again, I'm following our handout that we have for my students. Looks like this. It has all the information right here on it. So you should have that out in front of you as we're going through this. I am going to be covering some additional information, by the way, so you are responsible for what's on the handout. Now, the screw starts off with the head of the screw. There are different shaped heads of the screw, which we'll talk about in a minute. The slot is where you put the screwdriver to make the screw turn. This portion up here where there are no threads is called the shank of the screw. Usually the shank is the same size as the outside of the threads in a lot of cases, not always. But that's the shank of the screw. Then the center solid portion of the screw is called the body of the screw, and around the body are wrapped the threads. And the threads are the thing that actually dig into the screw and make it grab to hold. One of the advantages of screws over nails is that screws allow for disassembly, and they allow to have draw-up power. As you tighten the screw, it can pull the two boards together if you drill the holes properly, which we'll talk about in our next video. But right now we just want to talk about some of the aspects of wood screws. So these are the different parts of the screws. Now let's take a look at the different style heads that are commonly out there. This is probably the most common, a flathead wood screw. You can see it's got like a funnel shape to the top, and when you put this screw in, it comes up flush with or even with the surface of the wood. Another very common screw is a round head wood screw, and the head of this is rounded. Very hard to get this in the right spot on the camera here. And there's a dome-shaped head on it. Okay, so that's a round head wood screw. There is one that I don't have a sample of, and it's called an oval head wood screw. You'll see it on the handout, and it's kind of a combination of the two. Picture a flathead wood screw with a domed top. It's a little bit more decorative, so that the top is not flat across like this is. It's got a little bit of a roundness to it. It's just a little bit more decorative. They call that an oval head wood screw. So those are the three most common: flathead, round head, and oval head. You don't see oval head a lot. I have it on my handout because you used to. And I guess I just never took it off of there, but they are out there. Another one that you're going to see a lot is what's called a round washer head screw. And here's one. Let's see if I can get it in the camera the right way so you can see it. A washer head screw. It's going to, come on now, focus. Looks like a round head wood screw, but it looks like a washer underneath. It's kind of built in. So it looks like it has a washer, but it really doesn't. It's just the way the head of the screw is made. But you can see there's a little bit of a rim here, so it has a little bit wider footprint, less likely to pull through the wood. In our shop, that's what we have a lot of. So it's got a rounded top, but it looks like there's a washer underneath, but it's all built together, part of the screw. So that's a round washer head screw. My camera just doesn't want to adjust or focus on that little spot there. But anyway, that's a round washer head screw. Now, you may be familiar with drywall screws. Drywall screws have a funny kind of a head. It looks like a flathead wood screw, and a lot of people just treat it that way. But it's actually called a bugle head because it doesn't come up straight. Let me put it next to a regular one. And you can see that a bugle head is, let me find a better example. Here we go. These are about the same size. A bugle head is curved, where a flathead is straight, like a funnel. But a bugle head looks like the front of a bugle. Right? And the reason is that drywall screws were designed to put up drywall. And drywall is chalky material with a piece of paper on the front and the back. And as you put the screw in, what you don't want to do is tear through the paper. So they put this rounded shape so that as the screw head comes up against the sheetrock, it gently pushes against the paper and hopefully doesn't tear through. Where the flathead has a sudden change in direction and would probably punch through just about every time. So that's what you'll see on a drywall screw. People tend to use drywall screws for everything in woodworking. They are a lot thinner than a regular wood screw. The body of the drywall screw is thinner, a little more brittle. Doesn't have the strength that a regular wood screw has. This is a regular wood screw. This is a drywall screw. They're both black in color. These happen to be just a black coating on the screw, where these are chrome finished off. But and you can buy them. They call it zinc. It's a zinc coating. You can buy your screws in an assortment of ways. Now I tend to buy them with this black oxide on the outside. Screws can be made out of other materials as well. Here is a bronze screw. They also make brass screws. One thing to be careful of when using brass is a lot softer than steel screws, and they're real easy to break off. Even these bronze ones I find are a little bit easier to break off. What I often will do is take a regular steel screw, once I have all the holes drilled, and put in the steel screw, take it out, that cuts the threads, and then put the brass screw in after, just using a regular screwdriver, not a screw gun, because that would be a lot safer to put it in together with and less likely to break it off. But they do make screws out of other materials. So those are the different shaped heads that you'll find. Now, there are a few others out there. Let me just show you one or two others. And these, again, my students are not responsible for these because they're not on the handout, but I just thought I'd throw them in. These are trim head screws. I use these a lot when I do remodeling. It's a very small head. It's a lot like a finish nail. Think of it as a finish nail, only in the screw family. And it's a real small head. And as you screw this in, that little head will pull itself down below the surface, and you could fill over it or leave it the way it is, but it's a lot less noticeable than a flat head or a round head wood screw would be. And then another specialty screw is cabinet screws. These are for hanging cabinets on a wall. They're engineered so they have lots of tensile strength, and they have an extremely large washer head. This is a lot like that washer head that I was showing you before, but the washer part is much bigger and has a lot of surface area. So as you screw your cabinet to the wall, it has a lot of bearing surface to hold it nice and tight, and the shank of the screw is extremely strong, again, engineered for that purpose. And you'll notice, and we'll talk about this in a minute, it does have a cut in here that allows, there we go, you can see it now. It acts like a little drill bit, so you don't have to pre-drill a hole. This will drill its own hole as it goes in. And then here's another type of flathead screw that you'll see out in the industry, and it has some other funky things going on the top of it here, which I'll explain later. But lots of different kinds of screws out there. We can go on and on and on talking about the different kinds of heads of screws, but there are lots of specialty screws made for special purposes, like those cabinet screws for hanging cabinets. Think about how heavy a kitchen cabinet is hanging on the wall full of ceramic dishes. They can be pretty heavy, so you need to have something pretty structurally sound. If you use drywall screws, they'll go in real easy, but there's a chance they could snap and break and pull out. All right, so now let's talk about the types of slots that are in a screw. Now, don't get confused between the head of the screw and the slot of the screw. The head of the screw is the shape, like this being a flathead screw. The slot is the part where you put the screwdriver. Now, years ago, the common screwdriver slot was a straight, regular slot like this. I used to hate them because the big problem you have with them is the screwdriver never stays in the middle, and it slips off to one side or the other. And if you try to use it in a screw gun, it's even worse. So these have kind of gone by the wayside. I have a cabinet full of fasteners with all straight slot screws that nobody chooses to use anymore just because they're such a pain in the neck. So that's a straight slot. And the screwdriver for that would look like this. You get it in the picture here. The straight slotted screwdriver fits into the slot just like this. You usually choose the screwdriver according to the size of the screw. All right? You want a screwdriver tip that's the same width as the screw. Okay? Screwdrivers come in many sizes. As you can see here, here are two different sizes, a wide one and a narrow one. Okay? And they make them a lot bigger than that, obviously. The next most common one that you'll find is Phillips. Here, all drywall screws will have a Phillips head. That's just how they're made. And here's a regular wood screw. Again, same as the one I just had, but instead of a straight slot, it's got a Phillips slot. And again, Phillips screwdrivers come in sizes. So here is a number 2 Phillips, which is probably the most common. Where is it? There it is. Okay, and it fits into the screw just like that. And would work on this guy as well. They do make sizes. Here's a number 1, once I find it. So they come with numbers, see? So number 2 is probably the kind that's most common. Number 2 is the most common. Number 1 is a little bit smaller, and they make 3, obviously, and bigger. The nice thing about a Phillips, and the reason you see them on drywall screws, is they're self-centering. The screw always stays in the middle. Oop, didn't grab Phillips. The screw will always stay in the middle. It will not slip out left or right because of the shape of the screwdriver tip and the shape of the slot. So it has like this X with a deep spot in the middle that keeps the screwdriver right in there. So these work well with a screw gun. Okay, but these tend to slip sometimes also. So the next one that I want to show you is a square drive. All the screws we have in our shop, almost all of them, are square drive. Let's see, we got to get this just right so you can see it. And guess what shape the hole is in the middle? You guessed it, it's square, even though we have trouble focusing on it. All right, so it's a square drive screw. I think you can see that. And the square drive screwdrivers on the end are square. So if you look at the end of this tip of this screwdriver is square, and the screw fits right on there. The nice thing is, and you can do this sometimes with Phillips too, you can balance it right on there, and it'll stay there pretty well. Again, these screwdriver tips come with different sizes. This is, I believe, a number 2, and they also make them larger and smaller. Here's a little teeny one. Again, you can see that they come, different sizes in there. These are square drive screws. Now another one that's really popular are Torx bits. And a lot of these brass ones I was showing you are made by a company called GRK. The letters GRK. And all of their bits, their screws, have Torx bits on them. And a Torx head screw driver has this star shape to it. I don't know if you can see it in the picture, but it's kind of a star shape. You can see it on the flathead screw real easily. And the bit fits it. Now these bits come in different sizes. I don't know if you can see, this one is a 25, T25, T for Torx, and 25 is the size. The bigger the number, the bigger the end of it. Okay, and they come in screwdriver form. Like you can see here, these are just 2 screwdrivers, 2 different size Torx bits. Let's see, T27 and a T25 is what these are. And then you can also get them to fit a screw gun, and they'll look like this. And if you get them from GRK, they actually color code them so that you just at a glance you can tell what it is. You don't have to try to read the silly little numbers on there. But the different size screws take different size tips. All right. So if you like to use these, you need to have an assortment of tips for your screw guns so that you get the one that fits correctly. Okay. They have, see here, a couple of other colors. The yellow ones fit the little trim screws, and I think the red one will fit the cabinet screws. So these are nice assortment to have. These are called Torx head screws. All right. So you have slotted. Let's look at the picture on the handout. That'll make life easier for you. You have a straight slot, Phillips slot, the Torx that we were just looking at, and the square drive. These are the types of slots that you have in a screw. Now, let's talk about how screws are sized. When you buy screws, they're a lot like wire brads that we talked about in the last video, where the length is in inches and the diameter is with a screw number. And these numbers are common to screws. For example, here's the end of a box. This is a box of round head wood screws. They're showing you here it's a round head wood screw. It tells you the finish on it. Steel. It's made out of steel and it's got a zinc coating. There's 100 screws in the box. See, remember we talked about nails are sold by weight. Screws are sold by quantity. So it'll tell you how many fasteners are in the box. And these are 1.5 by 12. So the 1.5 is how long it is. And the number 12 is the thickness. So a number 12 screw is pretty thick. This is like a number 12, right? These are number 6. So you can see here's a 6 and a 12 next to each other. The lengths are different, but you can see that the 12 is thicker than the 6. All right, so that's how these are sold. Now here's another box. I'll put them side by side. And you can see this is a flathead wood screw, 1.5 inch long, 12 inches in diameter. So without even opening the box, I can tell what's in here. When I was a little kid, my dad was a carpenter, and in the garage he had all of his fasteners in old wooden milk crates. My dad was very organized, and he had all his nails and screws in the boxes, all with the labels facing out. But when I was young, I didn't know how to read the sizing on boxes. So if I wanted to make a go-kart or something, and I got into his garage there and went to go look for fasteners, I had to play like a game and try to remember what was in each box because I couldn't read the sizing. I didn't know that the length for screws was in inches and the diameter was a number. So I had to keep opening the boxes until I memorized what fasteners were in what box. If I was knowledgeable like I am now and knew what the numbers meant, I wouldn't have to play that game. It'd be a lot quicker to build my go-kart. But it's good to know how the sizing system works. Unlike wire brads, bigger number for the screw diameter is a bigger diameter. So number 12s are bigger than a number 6 or number 8. And the length is just straight old inches. So if I wanted to know what screw this was, I could just take a ruler and just say, okay, this is a 2-inch flathead screw, and just from experience I could tell if it's a 6 or an 8 or a 10, and you know that would give me the size. But when I'm putting in wood screws, I need to know the length because I want to put things together. And we'll talk about fastening screws on the next video, about how to actually choose and put them in. So let me just quickly take a look at my little handout here, make sure we covered all the points that I wanted to in this handout. Again, larger number, larger diameter, the length is in inches when sizing screws, and screws are sold by quantity. The box will tell you how many are in each box. Okay, well, we will go on to the next video in a minute to show you some other fasteners, and we will also be talking about how to put in a wood screw.